This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello and welcome to episode number 59. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 13th of January 2007. The dynamics of teams can be challenging. So, what does it take to get a team to truly work together as a well-oiled machine? This is the question that we explore with Diane Altweiss, PMP, today in the interview. She brings together the theory of team dynamics and offers some real-world advice in dealing with dysfunctional teams. We look at what the effects of a dysfunctional team are and discuss some ways in which you can change that. I also hope that you did enjoy the 5-minute bloopers and bleepers and outtakes episode that we published on December 31st. If you haven't heard it yet, it is a compilation of many things that went wrong as we recorded the shows from the past, which we had to cut out, and now we've made a compilation and gave it to you. It's good for a laugh, so go ahead and download it if you haven't heard it yet. And now let's move on with a few quick announcements and then we'll head into our helpful resources. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you regular listeners out there. The Project Management Podcast has now reached more than 500,000 downloads. Yes, it blows my mind away that we have been this successful. So thank you to all of you out there who've been sticking with us these past 1.5 years. Also, I wanted to let you know that there is currently a lot going on in my life. I have become the president of the Project Management Institute of Orange County chapter. I do have a job that I have to go to every day. I am working on the Project Management Prepcast. I'm married. I do have a wife. I'm also living in a very old house that needs some help. And of course, I'm also doing this here, the Project Management Podcast. As you can see, there is a lot, and I have to be able to keep all of this in balance. And that is why that I have decided to continue, for the time being at least, with the 2-week schedule. So in the past, you were able to download the Project Management Podcast on a weekly basis, and for the coming months, you will get us every 2 weeks. 2 quick technical items to finish it up. I'm, of course, also subscribed to the Project Management Podcast myself to make sure that everything downloads properly. And occasionally I notice in iTunes that suddenly old episodes keep popping back up. One from 2005 yesterday just started downloading, and I had no idea why. I just wanted to let you know if you notice this as well. This has nothing to do with us. We don't just republish old episodes. This seems to be a bug in iTunes. And there is also a bug in actually Internet Explorer 7. If you go to the website and you look at the very top of the website, you will notice that it looks rather ugly, that things don't align and that there are lines through everything. If you use Internet Explorer 6 or if you use Firefox, there is no problem, but with Internet Explorer there is a big issue there. And I'm looking into this. I'm not quite sure where the problem is yet, and I hope to fix this at some point soon. Today's episode is sponsored by Method 123, the providers of about 50 different kinds of project management templates. If I had to do it again, if I had to redo my company's templates like I did a little while back, I would definitely use the Method 123 templates. I didn't know them then, and I would definitely go back and I would use these templates as a basis and work from there. To check out the Method 123 templates, please click on the banner on our website or on the link called PM Templates to increase your productivity under PM Help in the left-hand navigation. And as always with our sponsors, not just today with Method 123, but everyone in the past as well, if you want to visit them, please click on their banner that is displayed on the pmpodcast.com in their affiliations. That way the sponsor knows that you have found them through us. There are 9 helpful resources that we have for you in today's episode. Well, actually, only 3 of them are helpful, and the other 6, I should probably call them unhelpful resources, but we'll get to those in just a minute. The first one is the PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. The PMI has just released this new Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct to which all PMPs are now being held responsible since the 1st of January of 2006. Now, considering that it can be rather difficult and vague to put ethics in writing, I believe that the result, this new code, is a good basis. In a nutshell, the code discusses responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty that you as a project manager, not just as a PMP, should be following. Take a look at it. It is a good thing to do. Then we have 2 links about dysfunctional teams, of course, following today's topic of dysfunctional teams. The first one is called Functional and Dysfunctional Teams by Tina Irwi. This is a rather extensive blog entry about what functional and dysfunctional teams are, and all about how to move from dysfunctional to functional teams. Yes, this is very much in the spirit of today's interview. The second one is titled Dealing with Dysfunctional Teams, and this is just 3 questions and 3 answers. And Patrick Lencioni, he is the author of The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, answers the following 3 questions. What are some of the most common dysfunctions found in project teams? How can you determine if your team is dysfunctional? And what are some ways to correct these dysfunctions, or even better, to avoid them in the first place? Check out these 2 dysfunctional links, so to speak, if you would like to find out more and read a little bit more about today's main topic of the program. And now, on with the 6 unhelpful resources, so to speak. In the coming episodes, I will bring you my podcasts. I will give you a list of all the podcasts that I personally listen to. And today, we're going to start out with all the humorous podcasts that I listen to. And the first one is The Onion Radio News. The Onion Radio News is a daily podcast. It's about 45 seconds long. And The Onion, which is an online magazine, a humorous magazine that's been online for years and years, and they take a humorous headline that they make up, of course, and they come up with the most craziest stories that you can imagine. Next, there is Satire Peter Schneider. This is from Switzerland. This is in German. And Peter Schneider takes events of the day and gives them a little bit of a twist and just twangs them around. It's very funny if you speak German. It's very fast and furious. Then there is Real Time with Bill Maher. Bill Maher is a liberal stand-up comedian who's had several comedy shows here in the United States, and his latest one is Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO. And this is the audio portion of that 1-hour show that you can listen to. Very funny. In the beginning, he has a monologue, and at the end of the program, he gives us his new rules for the world of today. Then I also listen to Vobes. Vobes is a podcast by Richard Vobes out of Worthing in England. Richard does a almost daily program of about half an hour in duration, in which he raves and rants about the topics of today's world. Not quite sure if this is actually categorized as humorous, but it is occasionally very funny what he does, especially the Friday show, when often his mate Jimmy joins him, and they just drink beer and tell you what the beer tastes like and whether they like it or not. I'm not a beer drinker myself, but I find it very funny and entertaining to listen to. I also find the Brian Unger report rather funny. Brian Unger is a humorist, a satirist rather, and this particular podcast comes to us on a weekly basis from NPR, National Public Radio here in the United States. 3 to 5 minutes in length, he takes a topic of the week and also, like Peter Schneider, gives it a twist and makes it very humorous. And finally, here is my dirty little secret. I listen to The Big Squeeze. The Big Squeeze is by Georgina Sowerby and Brian Love. And those two, they are absolutely rude. They are obnoxious. They use foul language. And it's just wonderful to hear them. This is definitely something for adults only. And it is really almost embarrassing to admit that I listen to this particular show, but I just love it. And that concludes our 3 helpful and 6 unhelpful resources of today. We will continue next week with another category of the podcasts that I personally listen to. You can, of course, find all today's recommendations in the helpful resources section at thepmpodcast.com. And now let's move on to today's main topic, the interview with Diane Altweis on dysfunctional teams, or rather on how to overcome team dysfunction. Diane has managed major software development projects in the insurance, financial services, and healthcare industries. As a PMP and consultant, Diane has also collaborated in the development of several project management examination preparation courses, which are offered to individuals as well as corporations in California and around the world. Her company, Outercore Professional Development, published the 2nd edition of their study guide, which is called Achieve PMP Exam Success, a concise study guide for the busy project manager, in 2005. In addition to consulting, Diane teaches courses in project management and business process improvement, and of course also on team dysfunction, for the UCI and for the University of South Florida, where she received a master's in finance and marketing and a bachelor's in management information systems and production management. Here we go, the interview with Diane Altweis. Enjoy.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview. Today with Diane Altweis, PMP, President of Outercore Incorporated.
Fellow project managers, I am here at the home of Diane Altweis, who has given me a beautiful glass of Merlot during our interview here tonight. Hello, Diane, and welcome to the program.
Hi, Cornelius.
Let's start out with the absolute basics. What does dysfunctional mean?
Basically, dysfunctional means that there are people issues on your project. And most of the times when I ask a group whether or not they live and breathe in a dysfunctional environment, the answer is always yes. So the reality is that there's always people issues to deal with.
So what does a dysfunctional team look like?
It's a team that may not be communicating well, It's a team where there's one player that isn't playing nice in the sandbox. It's a team where there's varying opinions and those various people are not coming to some sort of agreement. It's a lot of different things. It's what is challenging in projects, in pretty much every project.
From the point of view as a sponsor then, what does it mean if I have a dysfunctional team manage one project and a highly functional team manage another project?
From a sponsor perspective, it means they probably don't have to get as involved in the functional team's problems and issues. That team resolves them themselves, and they work cohesively together to resolve problems without having to bring in senior sponsors or people that are going to be, referees in a process. You want a team that can basically self-manage themselves.
Does that mean then that it's not only the sponsor who gets affected, but more people on the project team, on the greater project team?
To have a highly functioning team, it means that they can solve problems on their own. A dysfunctional team is one where the sponsor and various other people outside the team and within the team need to get involved so that that project can succeed. So it's more than just the sponsor being affected. It can delay the entire length of a project. It could cause failure to a project. There's a lot of things. If that team is not functioning to its best cohesively, then there's a lot that can go wrong.
Would you say that there are any particular industries where dysfunctional teams are more dominant than in others?
No, it's pretty much across the board. In the last presentation that I gave, I had about 200 people in the room, and basically everybody was in there because they've experienced in their mind what they consider dysfunctional. And that really is just a challenge a project manager may have in dealing with people and personalities. So everybody, every industry, deals with it. In an ideal situation, you have an entire team of people that all work very, very efficiently together. And when you're dealing with people, you've got all kinds of variables. And so basically everybody deals with dysfunctional teams at some point in their project.
That means you don't subscribe to the saying that if you are running an IT project, you're dealing with IT people, and IT folks usually have a lot lower capability when it comes to human interaction.
No, it's all across the board.
Okay.
It's in my experience, there is no industry or type of project that is exempt from potentially having dysfunctional teams.
Most of us live in denial. Even when we're on a dysfunctional team, we don't really notice it. What can we do to, say, take the pulse of our team to define whether or not it is dysfunctional?
If you are a project manager and have 2 team members that cannot seem to come to an agreement or a consensus, which is impacting the schedule, cost, delivery of whatever deliverable you're trying to complete, that is an indication of dysfunctionality where they cannot, without assistance, resolve it themselves. In many cases, projects have many of those situations going on simultaneously. So if you have one of those situations and you have one person that seems to be a challenge, it potentially could be throughout your project and team, depending on how many interactions that person has. So it really just takes one person on a team to cause dysfunction to begin.
So if I understand you correctly, that means it is maybe not necessarily my team as a whole that is dysfunctional, but certain relationships within the team are dysfunctional. 4 out of 5 people may have no problem, but the 5th person is causing issues.
Right. It really comes down to that weakest link.
Okay.
If you look at your project team and you have one person that might be a key decision maker that has the inability to make a decision and stick with that decision more than a week, that's a dysfunctional environment. That's still the decision maker. That's a person that needs to stand up to that decision. But if they waffle every other week, that's going to cause issues to the rest of the team. So it really comes down to what is your weakest link in your project for people to communicate effectively and work together effectively.
Once I have identified that my team is dysfunctional or that there are dysfunctional team members or the weakest link on my team, what do I do next? How do I get my team out of this dysfunctional state?
The primary building block that we talk about in our sessions has to do with trust. And if you look back at your personal lives or your business relationships, if you trust an individual, you will be more open to them, you will have better communication with them, you will be able to work more effectively with them. So that primary building block has to be in place for any team to function appropriately. And if I'll use that example of that one person, if that one person that has a difficult time making decisions, you have to look at it as the project manager. You have to look and say, okay, what is going on with that person that they are not trusting their decision or not trusting the coordination with the team to be able to stand up to that decision. So you have to kind of evaluate why is it that they cannot perform to the level you want them to perform. The first step is there a trusting relationship? Maybe they don't have high confidence in themselves, or maybe they don't have high confidence in other teammates. You have to kind of delve into that. This is where those soft skills definitely come into play, and you've got to investigate why that is what it is. So there's so many different reasons.
And of course, building a trusting relationship takes time. It's not something that you can just do overnight.
Right. So if you think about, if you had your choice of putting a team together, and the PMBOK talks about, you want to be able to select your team if at all possible. Well, there's a reason for that. If I select my team, I'm probably going to select people that I've worked with before, that I trust, that I don't have to micromanage as much. So the more people I have around me that I don't have to worry about, the more functioning you're going to have of the team. So again, it's that trust, it's that relationship. So if I had a team of people that I've worked with for 10 years each, and they all have the exact skill that I'm looking for, and they all can communicate well together, then I'm going to have a very highly functioning team.
What about matrix organizations then, where team members are pretty much assigned randomly to your project almost, and you as the project manager, you don't really have any kind of influence in changing that? How do you manage your dysfunctional team then?
Well, we don't know they're dysfunctional until you get into it, first of all.
We have determined they are dysfunctional.
We're assuming they're dysfunctional when we get them on. No, you have to assess that. Like one of the very first things, if you are handed a group of people, and you've got to assess their level of understanding of each other. So one of the first things we should do as project managers is do a little exercise with regard to introducing each other. What's their background? Get them familiar with each other so that they start building a relationship with each other. There probably will be people that know each other. Now, hopefully, they haven't had a bad experience with each other, but you'll start understanding whether they do or they don't as you get to know your team. One of the things that people they jump right into what we call team building. And team building, like mountain climbing or rock climbing or whatever people get thrown into.
Having pizza for lunch.
it doesn't necessarily work if the individuals aren't talking to each other. So still is that basic building block is trust. And they have to, and the way you build that trust is by allowing them to get to know each other, know their pet peeves, know their strengths. That's a great way to kind of work through that, is allow them each to talk about some of their strengths. You don't jump right into, okay, well, here's my weaknesses and here's the things that I didn't like. You want to kind of build a positive relationship to start off with. And it comes down to you as the project manager. You are the leader. So you have to kind of demonstrate by what you do in how you treat people as well. So you have to trust the team. You have to show them that you trust them. And then you have to try to get them to trust each other.
Takes a lot of time.
Takes a whole lot of time.
And a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we say that 90% of our job is communication. That's all communication.
Exactly. Let's look at how our listeners could approach that. Do you have some sort of maybe a bag of tricks, some best practices that you could give us so that when a listener realizes, hey, my team is dysfunctional, hello, that they could sort of go through a couple of steps in order to remedy that?
I'll give a couple scenarios. One we just talked about would be, you've got a team that doesn't know each other. And a great way to get them to know each other is talk about something that people are comfortable talking about. You know, where are they from? What's their background? What are things they like to do? Different hobbies. You'll be surprised that you can find a common point of interest with people that otherwise may never have talked to each other. So building some sort of commonality is the first step in building that trust. Now, another situation would be you've got a group, they trust each other, but now you're trying to get them to handle conflict more successfully. Part of our job as a project manager isn't to make everybody nicey nice. It's, we've got to solve problems. We've got to address issues. We've got to make some decisions. But you're never going to get that cohesive team camaraderie if you can't have the trust to start with. So now, let's say we have the trust, and now we want to start making some decisions and getting issues resolved. You got to now start encouraging some interaction with the team, positive or negative. You're going to have people that are in your team meetings that are wallflowers that don't speak up. You're going to have people that try to take over the whole meeting. So your job as the project manager is, how do I get all of the players to put their opinions on the table? And it's not forcing the wallflower to talk in a meeting of 20 people. It's not necessarily telling the person that always speaks their mind to shut up, although you want to sometimes. It's a matter of getting each of them to understand how to interact well together. And you have to show that by demonstrating it. You know, how do you manage conflict? If there's an issue to be resolved, open up the table for resolution. If you're seeing that one person is starting to take over the meeting, you might ask them nicely to kind of, let's see if we can get some other opinions on the table. So start working through that and showing them by demonstrating how to handle conflict appropriately. People that don't handle that well in a meeting, you'll get from the very first meeting, you'll see who you need to work with. Then you start working with them one-on-one on what they're good at, what they're not good at, and you can start giving them some feedback. Because what you ultimately want to do is you want that wallflower and that more boisterous person to be able to talk intellectually and cordially in a meeting together without taking any offense to the opinions that are going to put on the table. So the next piece is that conflict resolution. Once you get to that piece, then you can actually start getting to some decisions that people can stand up to and be held accountable for. So it's a whole evolution of building trust to the point where you ultimately get people that are accountable for what decisions are made. And that's a highly functioning team. They're doing it on their own. They're talking to each other. They understand each other. They're working towards a solution, solving problems, making decisions, becoming accountable for that decision that was made. And then you've kind of reached it. But it's a one-on-one ongoing effort by the project manager to be able to get to that point. And I've never been in a perfect project either. They all have issues.
When I heard you correctly, to summarize, I heard team management, I heard conflict resolution, and I also heard meeting management. Mm-hmm. Lots of soft skills. Mm-hmm. Where does a project manager learn these soft skills? What can they do if they feel, hey, I don't have enough, I need more? Where do they go?
There's lots of places that you can go just selfishly. We offer... Of course. We offer leadership classes. Right now we offer them through the University of South Florida in Tampa through their continuing education program. We're doing various classes with them, including our leadership course, where we spend a lot of time going through specific scenarios. The difficulty in taking classes such as ones that address these soft skills, it's really up to the project manager to be extremely sensitive to their environment and to apply a soft skill as needed in that environment. It's not something that you can read in a book and just kind of have a recipe for success, because every person is different, every situation is different. So it's really, you have to learn an approach to getting there. And what we teach in these classes is getting those building blocks put in place, and one person at a time. So to where you can get the soft skills, like I said, it's our class for leadership, but what you want is a class that has very situational orientation, where you're sharing with a lot of other project managers, because you'd be surprised how much great feedback and great ideas come from the people in the room, not just the instructor. We spend a lot of time on doing those situational exercises. So you actually feeding off of the people.
Something out to put two people together and they have to resolve something. Is it that kind of situational, or more?
No, we actually.
What happened to you? What happened to me? Okay.
We talk about a situation that might have occurred, good, bad, or indifferent. Here's a situation that might have occurred. What could they have done differently? And there's most times a project manager has to be very diplomatic, but there are times when you have to kind of elevate things and escalate things. When do you choose to do that? And again, it's learning those situations and what's appropriate, making those right decisions. And again, going back to the very first thing, is the team needs to trust you as a project manager first and foremost. And you're trying to build trust within the whole team. By doing that, if they have trust in you, then it goes a long, long way. And you usually don't have to escalate things once that happens.
What kind of corporate culture will I need in order to have a highly functional team? Is there anything specific that you would point out?
I think you deal with the culture you're dealt. I don't think... I've worked in aerospace kind of environments to service environments to technology environments. And every corporate culture is different. I find that regardless of the culture, to sound like a broken record, if that team trusts each other, then the culture itself isn't an issue. If the team doesn't trust each other, then the culture will take over.
On every team, there's always this one member, and this question actually comes from my own team. There's always this one member who has enormous technical know-how. And they know everything. They know how it works. They can make it happen. They can move you forward. And somehow you feel they're kind of holding us hostage. They're kind of, if you want to go one way, they don't want to go, then you're not getting there. So that to me is a sign that there is conflict going on, that there is a certain dysfunction going on.
Yes, there is.
How do you handle people like that who know that you need them, that you can't get rid of them, and they will hold you hostage for what it is worth?
Not knowing the individual that you're talking about, I'll use a similar scenario. A technical person that is extremely knowledgeable, probably the key person on that technology, they hold a lot of things at their vest and stuff. They keep things to themselves because they want to have that feeling of, I'm important. To a certain extent, I play to that ego, and I ensure that person recognizes that I understand their technical skill. One thing I absolutely do not try to do is question what they're doing. I first ask their opinion how to solve something. How are we going to solve something? And let them make that decision. And then I'm going to trust them to get it done. And I'm going to tell them that I'm going to trust them to get it done. And I'm probably will cover my butt a little bit on a person like that. Just to say, here's what we talked about. Here's what we agreed to do. Here's your opinion and how we want to approach that. And I'm not going to question it. That person's very knowledgeable, and I'm going to kind of play to that ego. I will also make sure that the leaders in the area, whether they're their boss or their peer or whatever, understand that we've had this agreement. If that person starts making the moves of trying to hold something hostage, get pulled off onto 5 other projects or whatever, and just not getting your work done, that's when I would probably take them to the side and remind them that's the kind of person that you don't want to confront openly, because they tend to, you're hitting them right in their ego. You don't want to confront them openly. You want to work to their ego and remind them of what they promised. Now, there probably will be some pushback on that, but then you just kind of make it a business problem. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's why we need to accomplish it. Here's the functionality that we're looking for. Here's your resolution. Do we think this still needs to be done? I'm not going to say yay or nay. And then how are we going to get it done? So now let's get their opinion on how do we get this done, regardless. Because usually they want to complete the task. They want to complete the effort. They just don't want to be questioned. So if you can work with that. Now, if you find that they're wrong, that's a different story. But usually they're in that position because they are very knowledgeable. So let them be the knowledgeable person. Your ego, your role as a project manager is not to tell them how to do their job. Your role is to get them to do that job. And that's how you have to approach it. You have to be very humble and play to that in some cases. Once in a while, you might have to get a little bit more aggressive, but usually you don't have to, as long as you play to their ego to some extent.
Thank you. That will help me personally. And no, serious, this is a very good answer for me personally. And I hope that other listeners out there also will be able to benefit from this answer. You talked about dysfunctional teams, I think it was last month. at our PMI chapter's monthly seminar that we hold. And during this, you also mentioned a 5-step process, and we're not going to discuss that here today. But this 5-step process is a great way for people to get dysfunctional teams back on the road. Now, those listeners who are more interested in this and would really like to get down to the meat and learn about this, are you going to do this again, this kind of presentation?
I don't have any particular seminars scheduled for 2007 yet. I'm working on that, but we do offer that leadership course through University of South Florida. So for anybody that wants to come down to Tampa, Florida, the website, my website, www.outercoreinc.com. If you go to our strategic partners, there's a link to University of South Florida, and you can see where our leadership class is being held. I think it's in March of 2007 is our next one. Again, having a dysfunctional team is a symptom. And what we try to stress is the project manager is the leader, and it's your job to try to bring it out of that dysfunctionality. It's not something that you should try to get your sponsor to do for you. This is something that you as a project manager need to learn how to do so that you can be extremely effective and self-supporting as a project team.
You've pretty much answered my next question as well. I wanted to finish the interview with, in the beginning we looked at what a dysfunctional team looks like. And I'd like to end it with a look at what highly functional teams look like.
A highly functioning team is a group of individuals that have unique skills, that their unique skills are appreciated amongst the team members, that the team members know who is responsible, they know how to communicate, they know how to resolve conflict on their own, are willing to make commitments, make decisions, be accountable, and then take great pride in measuring the fact that their project has impacted an organization. That's a highly functioning team.
And I'd love to work with one of them. Wouldn't you?
Wouldn't we all?
Absolutely.
But that's really what I think is really fun about managing projects, is there's always a challenge. And when you get, even if it's a subset of your team working in that way, it's a wonderful thing because you're always going to have a challenge. If there weren't any issues, we wouldn't have a job. But if you can have subsets of your team working in that way, it's wonderful.
That is so true. Thank you so much for your time so
You're
far.
welcome.
We end our interviews with the final 10 questions, the same 10 questions we ask for everybody. You ready for those?
I guess so.
I always have to cheat here. Number 1, what is your favorite project?
That's a real hard one. I mean, I like them all.
Number 2, what project would you like to have managed?
I much prefer projects that have a totally blank slate, that really need that vision, and it's a totally different world for an organization. So I've gotten an opportunity, fortunately, to do several of those over my career, and that's what I really like. Give me a blank slate, and we're moving forward.
Number 3, what is your favorite project management book? Of course, your own don't count.
The one, my favorite one probably has to do a lot with this particular topic. Lencioni did the 5 dysfunctions of a team, which is a portion of what we talk about in this. It's a great, very short read that has a lot of information on it and a lot of things that people can relate to.
Number 4, what is the topic of the next seminar that you're planning to attend, or in your case, that you're planning to give?
I'm probably going to do one of the PMI chapters, professional development days in Arizona in June, I believe, next year, but I haven't finalized that.
Number 5, what is the best way to make a project fail?
Ignore dysfunction.
Number 6, how do you like to celebrate a successful project?
With good wine.
Well, let's take a sip.
I'll take a sip.
Where were we? Oh, yes. Number 6. No, that
Number
was it.
7. You've had enough, Cornelius. Cut them
Number
off.
7. How, in your projects, where do you focus most of your attention in order to be successful?
I would be remiss if I didn't say the people after this interview.
Yes. Number 8. If you weren't a project manager, what would you like to be?
I like to teach.
Number 9. What is the one thing a project manager cannot live without?
People.
Number 10. Finally, the oldest question in project management. What's more important in a project manager? Is it project management expertise or is it industry expertise?
Project management expertise.
Why is that?
You can jump industries very easily if you've got excellent project manager skills.
Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate having had the opportunity to drink your wine and to talk to you about dysfunctional teams.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And that was our interview with Diane Altweiss on how to overcome team dysfunction. Let me remind you that you will find a link to purchase the book that Diane recommended, and of course the books that all our past interview guests recommended, in the helpful resources section of today's interview, or on the left-hand navigation if you click on books. As I had mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, our next episode will be released in 2 weeks. Yes, and that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com and also at www.pmprepcast.com. Or you can send your email to pmpodcast@gmail.com. And when you write, please don't forget to tell me where in the world you are writing from. And when you stop by at thepmpodcast.com, please also don't forget to click on the link called Scalable PM Methods, which you can find in the left-hand navigation under PM Help. That link will take you to the 10-step website where you can learn about scalable project management methodologies. And finally, we have this. For a project manager, overruns are as certain as death and taxes. Until next time.